Hello, my bookish friends. Welcome or welcome back. I'm Elizabeth. This is Reading Riley, and today we're going to talk about the books that I read in March. This is a wrap up. Let's do it. I had a very slow month. I read 4 books, so this should be a relatively quick wrap up. Hopefully, I say that. And as usual, I'm going to tell you about them in the order that I rated them from lowest to highest. I read a couple of horror books. I read 1 nonfiction, and I read 1 speculative new release that I'm going to talk to you about first because it was my least favorite of the month. And that is called The Memory Ward. John Bassoff. I've not read from this author before. I received this from Libro FM as an advanced listener's copy, so I have the audiobook. I do not have the physical book. This is 256 pages, and it is classified firstly as horror, which I don't think I would actually consider this horror. I would think of it, well, it might be horror. It might be. We've got horror, mystery, suspense, and fiction. This was published on March 4th, 2025, so new release. I started this on March 12th. And finished it on March 22nd. So this took me 10 days to read. I didn't realize that. Wow. I would compare this to The Truman Show. The way this character is introduced definitely gives that energy in that atmosphere because he doesn't know what's real and what's not. So we're following this guy, and he lives in Bethlehem, Nevada. And he's a postal worker. He's 33 years old, and life seems to be perfect. It's like this utopia, right? And he lives in this little town, and it's giving Pleasantville, it's giving Stepford Wives, it's all of those things where it's like, okay, it's too perfect.
What's happening here?
One day, he's carrying the mail, and he accidentally opens a letter, like it falls out and he's trying to fix it or whatever. He notices that there is just a blank page inside this letter that he's delivering. That's what kind of catapults him into this curiosity. He also gets a visit from a random woman in the middle of the night telling him not to trust anybody. This one is a little bit trickier to review just because it's speculative. I would say this is speculative. So I'm not gonna give you too much about what happened. I did give this 3 stars, which I guess I should have mentioned before this. So I think it's good and I do recommend it, but it's not one of my favorites. It's not one that's going to stay with me for a long time. This obviously is called The Memory Ward, and we're dealing with issues about memory in this story. This kind of reminded me of Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney, because in that one we're exploring a medical condition, this thing, that is like face blindness. This one we're exploring a different neurological condition called hyperthymesia, and it's an ability that allows people to remember nearly every event in their own life. They can recall what they were doing on April 8th, 1997, if they were alive. What the weather was like, what song they listened to on the radio, all of these like really impressive details. And that is connected to the title, obviously, of The Memory Ward. It was hard for me to keep picking it up. It's just got a lot going on as far as the way that the story is set up and the actual way that it's told. But unfortunately, because I didn't connect with the characters on that level, it made it drag on a little bit for me. If you do prefer a more plot-driven story, I think that this one could be really cool for you. And if you're interested in exploring that theme of memory, this could be interesting for you as well. The next book that I'm going to talk to you about is a 4-star. So the rest of these are all 4 stars and above. As far as quality of reading goes this month, pretty good. Our Midnight Society book club pick from March, that is Grady Hendrix's Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. I will try to be brief about this one because we do have an entire live show that's available to watch if you're interested, and I'll post that above and below. I was joined by my IRL BFF Sandra, as well as the lovely Ashley from Ashley's Little Library to discuss this. I have not read all of his books. I would compare this one most closely to My Best Friend's Exorcism. It has that female friendship, that bonding, that coming of age, found family in here as well, but it's not perfect. This is not perfect, but he did so many great things in here that I feel like it's a solid 4-star. Although this one is longer. It's 482 pages. This is the longest book I've read in a while. I had this on audio and physical, and I used a credit for this one on Audible, which was probably preemptive because I think it's available other places now as well. My buzzwords for this are witchcraft, historical, set in 1970, made me cry, this did make me cry, and coming of age. This is categorized under historical and horror. It was published on January 14th of this year, 2025, and I started this on March 27th and finished it on March 29th. So it took me 2 days to read it, and then the 30th was the live show. So I really left this one to the last minute, especially for an almost 500-page book. That was very brave of me, and I don't know what I was thinking. I will not be doing that next month. Speaking of which, there's no live show in April, but we will have one in May. We're reading The Unworthy by Agustina Bazterrica. That is translated, is this, I wonder if the same woman that translated Tender as the Flesh. Sarah Moses is the translator, and y'all corrected me last time, she is not Spanish, she is Argentinian. Argentinian? Anyway, it's been translated into English. It's called The Unworthy. This is a religious dystopian following this woman who is trapped in this cell. Ooh, this copy I also got from Barnes & Noble is really kind of cool. Cloistered away from the climate catastrophe that has plunged the world into chaos, a woman writes the story of her life in whatever she can find, discarded ink, dirt, and even her own blood. A lower member of the sacred sisterhood, she dreams of ascending to the ranks of the enlightened at the center of the covenant and pleasing the forbidding superior sister. But when a strange newcomer joins the ranks of the unworthy, the narrator is forced to consider her long-buried past. As she grows closer to the newcomer, she is increasingly haunted by questions that she can no longer ignore. How did she get to the sacred sisterhood? Why can't she remember her life before? And what really happens when a woman is chosen to be enlightened? My guess is
She's getting killed.
That's just me. Really excited for that one. So stay tuned for that and look for the live show date on my Instagram at the Midnight Society Book Club. We're talking about Grady Hendrix. I get distracted. I've also compared this to Cackle by Rachel Harrison. This does feel, like I said, it's one of Grady Hendrix's more softer, although there are some very sensitive topics in here. Graphic birthing, surgical scenes, abuse, pregnancy, just child pregnancy, a lot. If you need trigger warnings, please look it up. And this also reminded me of The Craft a little bit because we have these women who are coming together, experiencing some kind of agency in their lives, like for the first time in their lives. Not even women, these are girls. I'm sorry, these are girls, these are children. They've never had any kind of agency and they stumble upon this book of witchcraft. Oh, How to Be a Groovy Witch, that's what it's called. So you get pages like this in the actual book. So you can see like what the pages of the book look like, what the font is, and you can like read it as they are reading little bits and pieces of it. We're following this group of young girls, like I said. They are getting sent to this center for wayward women for pregnant girls who have become pregnant out of wedlock. And they all have come from their own devastating situation. The main character we're following is Fern, though, which is not her real name, but is the name she is given when she arrives there. Because, of course, they cannot tell anybody of their identity or their names or talk about where they grew up or literally anything genuine about their personality, or they're not supposed to. Because they don't want this to come back to them that they had a baby. Because this is all supposed to be like secrecy. These parents send their girls off, they have their baby, and then they come back home and pretend like nothing ever happened. So that's, you know, what we're dealing with here. Though I will say this is like a softer book. There are a lot of heavy moments like that and heavy themes. So just keep that in mind. I'm not gonna get too much deeper into this. I think if you want to know more of our thoughts and spoilery thoughts, then watch the live show because we do get into spoilers in there and we will let you know when we're gonna get into spoilers if you don't want to be spoiled. Oh yeah, the audio was kind of weird. I didn't love the audio for this one. When they did the chanting and the spells and the birthing scenes, oh my God. I know it's like just awkward to listen to it like a birthing scene anyway. It's kind of like if you had an audiobook for a romance book and you're like, sex scenes. It's weird like that, but it's also like the choices that the narrators made was just very interesting to me and was not, especially the chanting. It was weird. It was weird. There is an afterword where Grady Hendrix talks about, he's a man that has written this book about teenage pregnant girls, and he's like, hey, I know it's weird that I'm a man doing this. Part of me is like, wow, I'm impressed because you would not know this was written by a man. And this is why I love Grady Hendrix as a writer, because he has a lot of empathy, and so he can put himself in that position without being afraid to do that. And maybe, you know, I'm sure he did have some kind of anxiety going into this just based on the fact that, you know, he's not a woman and could never give birth, but you would never know. He pulled it off so well. And he says he did, you know, ask a lot of people about their experiences and do a lot of research. But he said this is set just before Roe v. Wade passed. And so there's some sobering commentary in here, especially with Roe v. Wade having been overturned. This becomes very striking social commentary and a very foreboding type of story because we could go back to this. So this is a cautionary tale. It really is. He had 2 women in his family that eventually confessed to having given birth in the 70s and having been sent to a home for wayward girls. It was very much something that hit home for him, that felt very personal. And he said when he doesn't understand something, he writes a book about it. And so that makes total sense why he wanted to write this story. And it's absolutely appropriate for the current timeline. This trajectory off of the current timeline that we have found ourselves in. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it at that. I said I wasn't gonna talk a lot about it, and it did. So let's leave it there. My next two books I'm gonna talk to you about, one is, I rated it a 4-star, but I think I'm gonna push this one up to a 4.5 because I really, really did appreciate it. And I have a little bit more insight into it after the fact now that I will tell you about that has kind of made it better for me in hindsight. And then my last book that I'm gonna talk to you about today is actually a nonfiction, technically. It's an audio documentary about consciousness. But first, let's talk about Maeve Fly. If you noticed my templates on Instagram this month for April, they are inspired by this book cover because I did enjoy this so much in March. I'll pop that up here. That's always available on my Instagram and it's free. If you want to track your books on Instagram over the course of the month, I try to have it up on the first of the month and you can find them in my highlights. Maeve Fly. I had spent way too long owning this and not reading it. You all told me I would love it and I did. And what's wrong with me? Why didn't I pick this up? I absolutely loved it. And this is actually the second book I read by this author. I started with American Rapture and I do enjoy this more. American Rapture felt too YA for me, even though it was just really, really, really heavy subjects. It just felt really young for some reason. This is an interpretation, from my understanding, of American Psycho from a woman's perspective in current day. She plays Elsa at Disneyland and it's her favorite place in the world. She loves Disneyland so much because it's so plasticky and beautiful on the outside, but then it also has this like dark, rich underbelly. And same goes for the city of LA. Also dissecting, you know, the beauty on top versus that dark underbelly. The structure of this is so perfect. I thought it was really fast paced. Let me go into my stats real quick. 288 pages. I got the advanced listener's copy of this from Macmillan Audio like 3 years ago. Thank you so much for being so patient with me. And I also had the physical copy, obviously, so this was a tandem read for me. I started it on March 1st and finished it March 6th. So this one took a few days for me too. This is categorized under horror, fiction, thriller, and fantasy, and it was published on June 6th, 2023. The audiobook for this is narrated by Sosie Bacon, who is the daughter of Kevin Bacon and Kira Sedgwick. Really interesting, did not know that. I didn't always love her performance, like from the beginning. She does have a very distinctive voice, but she did grow on me, and I think her performance was great. CJ Leede obviously did her research on this, and this is another book that I want to read because it's one of Maeve's favorite books. And I think that inspired the cover of this as well. But obviously this is also compared to, like I said, American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis, which I have started reading and have not finished it. I have been reading it for like half of March and into April now. It's gonna be interesting at my wrap up next month. I haven't finished it yet, but right now, I don't know how I can sit and listen to him talk about what everyone's wearing, where they got it from, and every single item in every room. I get that it's from the perspective of this guy and this is how he thinks, but my reading experience is so crappy with this one right now. I have to finish it because I have to have read this, especially having read Maeve Fly. Although I will say, I know I'm gonna like this one better than American Psycho. Not only is it way less annoying in the writing style, it's following a woman, and we need more female characters in these spaces. And it has the Disney princess angle, it's got like the weird stuff, it's got everything you could possibly want in this. And also the brutality, of course. Maeve lives with her grandma. We don't get any of her history in the story. She breaks the fourth wall and is like, you don't need to know about my past before I met my grandma. She met her grandma as an adult. She moved to LA. She sees the world through the eyes of a predator, and therefore she knows how to find predators in the wild. She knows how to pick them out, but she feels very unique aside from the fact that her grandmother is just like her. And I don't know if she specifically says she's a psychopath, but I mean, it's based on American Psycho. We can assume that, I think. Very little empathy. She compares it to having a wolf inside of you that you cannot show to the world. A wolf needs to lurk in the shadows. If the wolf is just being brazen and not being smart about it, then the sheep will gather and take him out. This is a metaphor throughout the book for Maeve trying to like hide her true nature, hide her true self. She has a best friend, Kate, and Kate plays Anna, the Anna to her Elsa, at Disneyland. They're like BFFs. Kate is becoming an actor and she's trying to, you know, find her big break. Also, grandma is sick. The way Maeve sees it, she's got about 2 more years with her grandma and with Kate before Kate like blows up, based on statistically how many years people put in to the business before, like if they get their big break. She just assumes after Kate gets famous and her grandma passes, she's just gonna be by herself forever. So she's just trying to really soak up this time and this moment. But then things start going wrong and we see her spiraling, and we see very much in the same vein as The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim, we're seeing the downfall. We're seeing the pressures that are getting placed on her and how she reacts to that. And then when she meets Kate's brother from out of town, he's a hockey player, she starts to have this fascination with him, but it's not healthy for her either. And when they start connecting, her life changes forever. I loved the way that this ended. I don't think everyone's gonna love it, but I feel like it definitely added to the discussion of what this is trying to say. It's feeling very much in the vein of like a parable where it's like teaching you a lesson. The way that it ends absolutely adds to that overarching theme and discussion that CJ Leede is having with this story. I really loved it. I think it was great. 288 pages. I don't remember feeling like I didn't want to pick it up. I remember feeling like it was a good time. And I like it even more after letting it sink in and after having sat on it for a while. So I really do think if you haven't read this one and you support women's wrongs or you want to follow the downward spiral of a psychopathic woman with all of the bling and plastic of Disneyland and LA, then pick it up, y'all. It's so good. It's so good. It really is. Last month, I started getting into a little bit of a spiral of my own and started reading about quantum mechanics, quantum physics. I read Something Deeply Hidden by Sean Carroll and absolutely loved that. This is going to be in a similar vein, but not quite. It's kind of adjacent to that. It's called Lights On: How Understanding Consciousness Helps Us Understand the Universe. This is an audio documentary made by Annaka Harris. I got the ALC of this from Libro FM. Annaka Harris, y'all gotta look her up. Look her up. She's a smart woman. Women in STEM, go follow this woman right now. Follow her right now. She's our leader, okay? Consciousness might be the greatest mystery of the universe, and Annaka Harris is our best detective. Get ready for a riveting exploration of what felt experience is, where it comes from, and how it varies among humans, animals, and plants. So basically throughout this documentary, she's exploring the idea that consciousness could be fundamental. It's gonna be a lot to explain. Fundamental meaning you can take it down to the smallest units. If it's fundamental, then there is consciousness in things that we don't necessarily see it. We assume that people are conscious because of the way we interact with them. But really, you can't tell unless you are inside that lived experience. And so she interviews all of these different scientists in differing backgrounds to try to get down to the root of this. What is consciousness? So we first start out with a definition of what is consciousness, and she says consciousness is a felt or lived experience.
Is it possible that consciousness is a much more basic phenomenon in nature and is essentially pervading everything, so is much more like gravity? And so not that it's less special than we assumed, because gravity is something that's obviously very special in our universe, but it affects everything. Does consciousness go deeper in nature than the sciences have previously assumed? So rather than arising out of complex processing in brains, namely, is it possible that it's a much more basic property of the universe? And so there are felt experiences arising in more systems and organisms than we previously realized.
Figure out, why do some organisms have a felt experience and why do others not? And do they not? Or do we just not know that they are having a felt experience? And how do we measure that if you can only know if you're having a felt experience if you're in it? So it sounds really convoluted, but she does such a good job of exploring this. If you're not like a super science nerd or anything, you can absolutely understand. Because she's not either. That's why I love Annaka Harris. This is what brought me to the understanding that the difference between physics and philosophy, because from what I understand, philosophy is the concepts that arise from that math. She is someone who isn't a math person, but obviously she probably understands more than I do. But so she's approaching this from, like a layman's perspective. So it's really, really easy to follow. So we talk about the self and how the self, or our sense of self, is not some defined thing. It's not like an inside out where like it's blue. It's a process. It's a verb. It's something that's continually changing and growing. The self is the deception. It's not the thing that is doing the perceiving. A few of the people that she interviews, Joseph Goldstein, he's a meditation teacher, and he talks about perception as it's related to memory, and how some people, when they go into meditative states, I don't even know how to get into that with on this level. David Eagleman is another one. He researches neuroscience, time perception, sensory substitution, neural pathways, things like that. And then we're also but we also get an interview from Suzanne Simard, who is a professor of forest ecology. In her research, she has found that trees whose seeds have been spread, I think it's a certain type of tree, and they have this underground like network, but the trees know which other trees in the forest came from their seed, which ones are their babies, and they have a way to intentionally send more nutrients to those trees. Who are we to say that those trees are not in fact conscious? So it's all like an explanation of that. And if the trees are conscious, then maybe we can figure out something, maybe we can use this to figure out what we're missing in the exploration of fitting gravity into quantum mechanics. Maybe that's what we're missing. And I know this kind of sounds wild and like kind of out there, but like, it's just fun for me to explore this kind of stuff, and I had so much fun listening to this. I put it on my car on the way to work and back, and just had a really great time with it. Annaka Harris has written at least one book. I need to read her book. But she's just a really open, honest person, and she's not afraid to be wrong, but she's very steadfast in what she believes and what she's trying to come to her own conclusions. And she stands up against these like magnum brains of our society. She holds her own, and it's so impressive, and I'm just a huge fan of hers now. So I highly recommend y'all go follow her, go get this audio documentary, give it a good listen, because I'm giving it 5 stars. I think it's awesome. It supports women in STEM, and it's just really, really interesting stuff about consciousness and the universe and quantum theory, and they get into even Schrodinger's cat and more of that kind of, it's just every like weird thing. And I actually wrote down a couple of books. One of them is, I think, one that she had mentioned in there that I took note of, is called The Diving Bell and the Butterfly. Oh, that's right. That's right. This is about locked-in syndrome. Okay, a fiction book that I really enjoy about locked-in syndrome is John Scalzi, called Lock-In. It's kind of a crime, futuristic fiction. There was this huge pandemic. A large percentage of the country ended up with locked-in syndrome, where they literally are just locked into their bodies. You cannot talk, you cannot speak. You're locked in here. You just look asleep or you look dead, but you're still very much feeling everything. You're still very much thinking. In the future, they have come up with these basically like robots that you can like implant your brain into, so you can walk around in the world in a robot. And then there's a special police force that is dedicated to crimes that have to do with those things, and we're following the lead detectives on a case that has to do with a crime. Anyway, that's a really good one. I read it a long time ago, but I loved it. Also, The Diving Bell and the Butterfly is a memoir about Jean-Dominique Bauby, who was a 43-year-old editor of French Elle and suffered a stroke that left him completely and permanently paralyzed, a victim of locked-in syndrome. Once he had been renowned for his gregariousness and wit, Bauby now found himself imprisoned in an inert body, able to communicate only by blinking his left eye. So this is how I think they discovered that locked-in syndrome is a thing, because he was able to blink one eye. Less a record of affliction than it is a celebration of the liberating power of consciousness. Because he is able to blink his left eye, he was able to come up with a system, or the people around him were able to come up with a system for him to communicate, and he was able to write this memoir by blinking his left eye. Is that not insane? Like, that is insane. Very, very interesting. So that's just one example of a person who, like, we can't tell from the outside. There's no test we can do to see if they are experiencing life in there, if they are having some kind of felt experience, but we know that it's possible because of this guy. It's just a lot of crazy, interesting, fun, insightful ideas, and if that makes your brain spark as much as it makes mine, then I highly recommend you check out this audio documentary. I think I already said that, but it's worth saying again because it's so, so good. I've been rambling now. I've absolutely been rambling. That's it. That's all I have to talk about today. We're done. Stay tuned for the May book club, and that is, again, The Unworthy by Agustina Bazterrica. That's going to be announced on my Instagram at the Midnight Society Book Club. If there's anything you're like currently obsessed with right now, even if it's like TV shows or something like that, I've just rewatched The Devil's Plan, which is a Korean competition show where you're competing for like who is the smartest and the cleverest. Came out in 2023 and just rewatched it, and I'm obsessed with that all over again. But I guess there's going to be another episode or another season coming out this year sometime, so I'm kind of like really into that right now. We went to an escape room the other day, and I've also, with my stepdaughter, we did Neil Patrick Harris has a game called Box One, and it's basically an escape room too, but in a board game. It's for one person. I did it with my stepdaughter. We had such a good time. So I've been obsessed with like puzzles and trying to solve things. We did escape the escape room. It was an 80s themed. It was so much fun. It was my first one ever. And I was so proud of us for escaping, because the last 2 times we did the murder mystery dinners, we didn't solve it. And it drove me a little bit crazy and it made me feel bad. So I'm so glad we passed it. I'm gonna leave it there for now, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you as always. Don't forget that life is short, so read widely. Cheers and goodbye.